Hello, hello. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr. I apologize for the technical difficulties, so I'm starting quite late, but thank you for hopping in, joining in. Today we're going to be talking about the drama, the tea, and it's sad to see. It's kind of uncomfortable. It's pretty uncomfortable. As far as Trump and going after some Republicans, some people, there's plenty of commentary, people standing up for Trump. There's plenty of people turning away, which is getting very interesting because so many people expect for him to announce next week. Some people want him to wait till after the Georgia runoff. Some people are telling him not to be active in the Georgia runoff, including his former press secretary. It's pretty amazing. But there are still plenty of strong Trump allies as well. So we'll see how all this plays out. I mean, we can all have our opinion, but a lot of us are just along for the ride, and I'm just trying to do the commentary and be fair and still have my opinions. Thank you for people hopping in. Also, after losses and successes, parties will have different memos about what they think went wrong or what went right and analyze the data, etc. Well, I guess Studer Dixon got her hands on it and posted it online. So I don't know how much this is trending. Everyone's talking about it because there's definitely been some national people who I follow who have talked about it, retweeted, and talked about the memo. But it's certainly been trending all day in my sphere. So I'm going to mention it, and we'll see what all I say. But it's someone agreed with me. It is uncomfortable, and it's uncomfortable because also I know like so many players and people involved, so this just cut so personally, and I it's really raw. Obviously, the election was Tuesday, and it was tough for a lot of people. And the question is, where would you go from here? And there's a lot of finger pointing. There's like blame has no fathers, I suppose, and mothers. It's just an orphan. um, you know, but there's plenty to go around, I suppose. Also, I want to rebut this video. I just found out that I guess I got blocked from this person. But earlier today, I did a rebuttal on a video on TikTok. It's called Stitch, and it was about a woman who says that people don't actually believe abortion is murder, and her reason was the most bizarre I've ever heard. And it's always disheartening how many people will get in a comment section and be like, "Oh yeah, this is so smart, this is so amazing." And I'm just like, "Are you serious?" So I replied to it, and she didn't like my reply, so I guess she ended up blocking me. But I always plan to go into more depth, so I have another account. So I went on my other account and I pulled down the video, and we're gonna rebut it here, and I'm gonna clip it and put it on YouTube and probably back on TikTok as well. So anyway, before we jump in everything, please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on the website, articles, videos, etc. Make sure you guys are sharing, subscribing, following across all the different social media platforms. My handle is at Black Tea News, black like the color, tea like the drink, except on Twitter. That one is at True Black Tea. If you're watching on Facebook and YouTube, the link should be in the description. So please make sure you're following me, or you can go to the website and there's links there. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. I appreciate anyone who can do that and decides to support. It costs to stream, costs to run my website, all that good stuff. So if you'd like to help with that overhead, I very much appreciate it. And if you seriously, if you can, I very much appreciate it. But otherwise, thank you guys for liking, tagging, telling other people to watch. All that really does help. Thank you to everyone new who subscribes, who follows. If you like to watch on Facebook, take a second and make sure that you're actually following the page. Before, there's a lot of people who like the page, but then then they switched over to like follows being more important. One time I did a post like, yeah, make sure you're following, and people are liking it. And I looked at them like, a lot of these people liking it haven't followed the page. So just take a moment and make sure that you actually are following. And on YouTube, you can subscribe, but you also have to hit the notification bell as well. I don't know why you got to do all this like extra level stuff to actually see content of people that you want to see, but make sure that you are actually saying it. I do want to also thank the Bright Mission Pack. I'm in their studio today. If I say something today that triggers you, and gosh, it could be likely. It could be likely. Don't call them or anything. I'm just using the space. I am my own boss. I do my own words. So no one to really complain to. You're going to have to buy one of these black tea mugs and I don't know, cry into it. But I guess more appropriate mug would be the "You Are Not That Special." So you guys can check that, pick up some of that stuff and other merch at blacktnews.com. Okay, you guys know that I like to start with something a bit humorous, and Allie Stugley posted a poll that was just so funny to me. So I just had to share it. And you guys can answer in the comments how you feel about this poll. But she said, you're in a life and death situation. You have only 30 seconds to make one phone call to tell someone where and how to rescue you. But instead of making the call, you have to hand the phone over to one of two people. Which one do you choose? And the, the choices are John Fetterman and Joe Biden. And I did pick Joe Biden, though I had to think about it. I really had to think about it. But this was so funny. This was so funny, to me, at least. So I don't know who you'd pick. At the end of the day, it might take Joe a minute, but I think Fetterman might actually legitimately say the wrong thing. So I think maybe someone can make out what Biden is trying to say. So I picked Biden. Maybe you guys will pick Fetterman. Very funny poll. Very funny poll. So yeah, let's get into the awkward. So Donald Trump, who obviously is a president that many Republicans loved, gladly voted for him twice. If if he announces and gets a nomination and runs, and it's a rematch between him and Biden or whatever, or just basically any Democrat that they would pick, essentially, I'm gonna pick Trump for sure, 100%. And most people, I think, still feel that way, who are Team Red. Um, but it's getting a little uncomfortable with the going after like Ron DeSantis, and it seems like pretty obvious that it's because he doesn't want him to run, and Trump is very obviously going to run, or it seems like he's going to run. Um, I I was always pretty sure he was going to run. Then I heard that he maybe wasn't going to run, and then after all the stuff that they did recently, like Mar-a-Lago and stuff, that he was like going to do it. But he's never. He has obviously hasn't declared. There's rumors that he's going to declare next week. Some people are telling him to wait. But people are pretty sure that he's going to. But after the midterms and a lot of Trump candidates going down, and DeSantis having a resounding victory in Florida, like the betting markets have shifted in DeSantis's favor, and a lot of people are pointing their star that way. So Trump frustrated some people after election night because he actually dissed a couple Republicans who lost, and I shared these before. Um, Again, like it's not good that Republicans lost, but that was like his one of his first things that he said. And then there was also John Bulldog, who, and I'm not saying, I'm sure if I said that name right, but was a very nice guy, but he lost tonight when he disavowed after his big primary win his longstanding stance on election fraud in the 2020 presidential primary. Had he stayed strong and true, he would have won easily. Lessons learned. So he endorsed him and was again like, haha, You lost. It's not a good thing that, and I'm sure he knows it's not a good thing that we're taking the House by such slim margins. I think we still are anyway when the dust settles. Um, it's just uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable. People are questioning, like, why do you have to do this, sir? So he did come from for DeSantis, and he like did a statement coming for him. Let me read this really quick. News Corp, which is Fox, the Wall Street Journal, and no longer Great New York Post, bring back call, is all in for Governor Ron DeSanctimonious, an average Republican governor with great public relations who didn't have to close up his state, but did, unlike other Republican governors whose overall numbers for a Republican were just average, middle of the pack, including COVID, and who has the advantage of sunshine, where people from badly run states up north would go no matter who the governor was, just like I did. Ron came to me desperate shape in 2017. He was politically dead, losing in a landslide to very good Agriculture Commissioner John Putnam, who was loaded up with cash and great poll numbers. Ron had low approval, bad polls, and no money. But he said that if I would endorse him, he would win. I didn't know Adam, so I said, let's give it a shot, Ron. When I endorsed him, it was as though, to use a bad term, a nuclear weapon went off. Years later, uh, Ron DeSantis has some good quips every now and then. I don't think he'll ever be as funny as Trump is. But anyway, um, years later, they were the exact words that Adam Putnam used in describing Ron's endorsement. He said, I went from having it made with no competition to immediately getting absolutely clobbered after your endorsement. I then got Ron by the star and of the Democrat Party, Andrew Gillum, who was later later revealed to be a crackhead. By having two massive rallies with tens of thousands of people at each one. I also fixed his campaign, which had completely fallen apart. I was all in for Ron, and he beat Gillum, but after the race, when votes were being stolen by the corrupt election process in Broward County, and Ron was going down 10,000 votes a day, along with now Senator Rick Scott, I sent the FBI and U.S. attorneys, and the ballot theft immediately ended just prior to them running out of the votes necessary to win. I stopped his election from being stolen. I do remember the drama. My sister went down there, and so did a lot of RNC people who also lawyers and all that stuff. As far as like attacking him on the COVID thing, like Florida shut down for a little while, but they did open back up, and Ron DeSantis did a Sunday special with Ben Shapiro, and he's just like, I followed the science, and it just didn't make sense. And then he got a lot of crap for it. And there were some other governors that started opening up their states, and Trump like did criticize them. So I coming after DeSantis over COVID, just it's not a route that's I think will end up being something good in Trump's favor, especially since the country was closed down for so long. And I understand like the position that he was in. They were telling him all these millions of people were going to die in our best case scenario. Well, maybe not the best case, but they're telling him millions of people were going to die if they didn't shut it down. And Dr. Bricks and it wrote in her book how they didn't even have like the real data to like justify it, but they were just hoping that it was going to come in, or they figured it was going to come in. And the 15 days to slow the spread was a lie. Like I'm not saying that they told Trump or anybody else that the 15 days to slow the spread was a lie, as in they intended to go longer, but like Bricks and some other people, they knew that they were going to keep pushing it out and go longer and longer and longer, and they were just going to tell the American people 15 weeks, and they had to sell Trump on 15 weeks and then go from there. But they never intended it to just be 15 weeks. Um, it's just not a good route to go. Going after DeSantis with that, it's just not so. That's one thing that he said that he took the time to release. He also release. Nope, there's someone else talking about it. Trump also talked about the margins that he won by. Now the election in Florida is over and everything went quite well. Shouldn't it be said that in 2020, I got 1.1 million more votes in Florida than Ron D got this year, 5.7 million to 4.6 million. Just asking. And as this report, I believe for the I think he works at the Daily Wire, if I'm not mistaken, pointed out that you really can't compare midterms to normal general elections. They're always quite higher, the turnout in a presidential year. But if you're going to go by percentage points, Trump, won it by 3.3%, and Ron DeSantis got almost 20%. So, I don't know why he's doing this. I don't know why he's doing this. Again, and that's not even the weirdest thing, guys. The Glenn Youngkin one. Youngkin. Now that's an interesting take. Sounds Chinese, doesn't it? Why? You ever watch the show Kenan and Kel? Like, why? Why do this? In Virginia, couldn't have won without me. I endorsed him. Did very big Trump rally for him. Telephonically, got MAGA to vote for him, or he couldn't have come close to winning, but he knows that and admits it. Besides, having a hard time with the Dems in Virginia, but he'll get it done. So, not quite a diss-ish. The phone call rally, from my understanding, was really late in the game and something that you had to be invited to, so it wasn't really a big get out the vote effort to reaching people that they've never reached before. And Glenn Youngkin had already started to turn the tide at that point, from my understanding as well. But the Youngkin thing, sounds Chinese, doesn't it? Yeah, that's what people are talking about. That's what someone's laughing. Maybe it'd be funny if it wasn't such cringe, but people are just like, it's a casual racism for me. And that's what people are saying. And I don't think this man is racist or anything, but I'm just like, it's so cringe. Like, why? Like, it's not a good attack. It's the I don't know, the boomer stuff of nightmares. They asked Glenn Youngkin about it, and God bless his heart, he tried to dodge it a bit, but he did respond a little, which it was a good response, but he could have just said no comment and laughed at it. But I wonder if he hadn't actually seen the remark. He claims that he hasn't seen the remark, but he's kind of laughing, so I don't know if I believe him.
What's your reaction?
First of all, I didn't see it.
We have it right here.
And I have to be honest. I've been busy all morning. Listen, you all know me. I do not call people names. I really work hard to bring people together, and that's what we're working on. Well, that's what I'm saying, and that's not the way I roll, and not the way I behave, and I think, again, this is a moment for us to come together as a nation.
Yeah. Youngkin sounds Chinese. I guess it's funnier now that I've had some time to dwell on it. Yeah, it's just really uncomfortable. And there's people coming out and saying all these rhinos are moving toward the DeSantis camp, which I don't know about that. I think there's so many people like never Trumpers and there's all sorts of folks who are invested in the Trump brand, that if Trump isn't the nominee, like the Democrats, I think obviously want him to run again because he is so polarizing. There's so many people who love him, but there's so many people who are enraged and inflamed when they see him, and they'll go out to the polls and they'll vote against him. I think the idea that people voting for Trump en masse because they are living through the Biden era and being like, well, let me go fix my mistake. I think we're vastly underestimating people or overestimating them, whichever of the two, because it's very hard for people to admit that they're wrong. It just is, especially adults and maybe kids too, because it's just hard for people to look at themselves in the mirror and say that they got it wrong. Think about all this COVID stuff with like so much has come out with all these people being wrong, and there's still people who wear their masks. Or still like people can't understand like so many people voted for Gretchen Whitmer after she was like one of the worst governors in the state as far as these COVID policies. But so I saw someone mention on Twitter, and I'm like, that's a good point. That not everyone suffered the pandemic in the same way. Some people actually like got a lot of money, prospered from it, and you didn't have to pay rent for a long time, and got all this unemployment, and bought shoes up the wazoo and all this other kind of stuff. Like during the pandemic, like the stores at our local mall that always had like Black Friday kind of crowds was like Nike and Champs and like these really urban stores, and people weren't going to this business casual stores, and there was a lot of stores that closed down, and there was there were people who took their money to get work done in some of these like places. So there are people who widely benefited off of the pandemic. Like you might be like, I lost my business, my kids suffered, like they're having all these mental issues and etc. Yeah, and all that stuff is terrible, but not everybody suffered the way that you suffered, and they don't have that same emotional attachment. And then there are people who were empowered to be mean to you. And if you didn't wear a mask, they would treat you like crap. If you didn't get vaccinated, they wanted you to die. Like people can't just get over how vile they were and just admit that they were wrong and let go of that self-righteousness. It was no, Whitmer was trying to protect us. I was trying to protect us, and you're a bad person. Not everybody can go, oh shoot, I've been lied to. Like Ben Shapiro, like a week or two ago, was like, man, they lied, and I don't know if I really would have got the vaccine if I had known the truth back then. And he just, I don't know, sounded kind of like a poor puppy. Everyone else was just like, we tried to tell you, dude, but he was just like, I was just following the data. They lied to me. Yes, they lied to you. But some people don't want to admit that they were tricked and that they participated in the charade. So I said that to say some people, and probably a lot of people, probably too many, are still going to be like, nah, I made the right decision back then, and I don't like where we are right now, but I don't want to go back to, because they got to remember way back then. Now, as you get more years removed and things are bad and people want to change, but then people start getting used to how bad things are. It can get to a point where things are so bad where they need change, and Trump isn't change, it's just going back. So, or they'll be like, well, we've been through this and we can suffer a little bit longer, but people got sick of all the headlines and stuff like that. So they're probably overestimating the amount of people who they think is just going to say, I made a mistake. That is so hard for people to do. It is so hard for people to do. So many people don't want to admit that they were wrong. And they were wrong. Voting for Biden was a mistake. I wish to God Trump was president right now. I really, really do. I really, really do. But the Democrats is who they want Trump to run again. And then there's these grifters who want Trump to run again. These never Trumpers who are getting all these spots on MSNBC and getting the Lincoln Project, all these folks getting all this sort of money, etc. Like who and I did see that they said something about DeSantis the other day, not coming for DeSantis, but it looked like they kind of wanted to hitch a ride to a star because maybe they can get money from the Republicans who want to go after Trump. And I'm just like, you guys are trash. I hope no one else falls for your grift and you just die in obscurity. Like those guys are the worst. They're the worst. But Trump has made a lot of people a lot of money with his brand, with his name, people who are for him, people who despise him, and people who pretend either way. So it's not something that people easily want to let go. So there are some people who MSNBC has been commenting on it, but there's still at the same time, there's a couple of segments of people and different tweets of people talking about DeSantis and saying, he's got a glass jaw and naming some of his flaws.
But my gosh, does Ron DeSantis, has he set up shop in Donald Trump's head?
Yes, he has. Now, look, there's actually one truth in Donald Trump's statement, and that is that Ron DeSantis owes his political career to the former president. Without question, there is nobody in America that more deftly and successfully used Donald Trump. Yeah. And I say used, right? He was the ambassador of Trumpism when he was in the House. He then uses Trump to get to the governor's mansion, and then he steps aside from Trump, and he gets adjacent to Trump. He doesn't defend him, but he also doesn't criticize him. And the one component that this story is currently missing is Ron DeSantis has never taken the bait. I mean, I think a lot of people are waiting to hear what is the posture of Ron DeSantis in this moment. Does he just say nice things about the president and move on? Because right now, look, he's got the hot hand. He doesn't need to engage in the scrum. Ron DeSantis famously has a very glass jaw, fragile ego. You get him on the ropes and you start to see a Ron DeSantis that is not the manufactured package you see today. How will Ron DeSantis respond?
Yeah, so they went on in this segment and started listing some other things they didn't like about him, and there's some other folks who are saying that he can't go the distance either. We'll have yet to see that. But I don't know. Someone said that we should be focused on Georgia. When is the runoff? I know people are preparing for that, but if you think I'm going to just talk about the runoff the next few weeks every day, nonstop, that's not how commentary works. You talk about what's going on, what's juicy. So it's the news. It's the news. There are people reporting that Trump is isolated and someone said dark time, Trump's inner circle spoke to several longtime friends, donors, aides in the past 24 hours. Many said he's listening to very few people, isolated and mean-spirited about his potential rivals. Several of them say they're tired of his rants and are avoiding him. I have never seen him more irresponsible or chaotic than he is today. He seems to be in self-destruct mode. It's irresponsible to attack DeSantis and Youngkin, and it's irresponsible to announce in any time in the near future, especially before the Georgia runoff, per Trump advisor. And I don't know who is or isn't his source, but Michonne Maddock, who is the co-chair of the Michigan Republican Party, she did tweet out, this is the exact kind of bleep meant to demoralize President Trump and our base. I texted him and he called me right back. There was no darkness or mean-spirited. He sounded great, confident, and determined. The exact opposite of everything you claim. And I don't doubt what she says is true. He's I don't know. I think someone said he's probably venting with the tweets. They're not tweets, from whatever they're called on Truth Social. I do think that's his way of venting for sure. And sometimes you vent and you release. I'm not condoning or saying that was a good idea, but it is what it is. But yeah, there's plenty of people who still have his back. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. There's still I gotta be honest, I hear people from all around getting tired and thinking that we need to go in a different direction, but there's definitely still a lot of love and support his way. So it'll be interesting if he does actually announce next week. We'll see if he's going to pull back a little bit. I don't know how much of his Youngkin talk had to do with Winsome Sears commenting the other day about Trump. And Winsome Sears, I'm going to go ahead and just play her clip.
When we look at the mission, and as a Marine, we're looking at the mission, and, the voters have spoken, and they have said that they want a different leader. And a true leader understands when they have become a liability. A true leader understands that it's time to step off the stage, and the voters have given us that very clear message.
So
Because
does
this is
that
about
apply
America.
within the Republican Party, Lieutenant Governor, to Donald Trump, that it's time to step off the stage?
Yes, a house divided against itself cannot stand. And indeed, that's where we are today. And as I said before, America is the prize. Why do we want to win elections? It's because we've got to learn to love each other, live together, govern together. And the voters are saying enough is enough.
So if the party wants to move on, or some of the parties, such as yourself, Lieutenant Governor, maybe Governor Youngkin feels the same way, but Donald Trump still makes a speech next week that he wants to run for president. What would you think about that?
I could not support him. I just couldn't, because we have seen, for example, in those states where he has endorsed the candidates, in fact, Republicans on the same ticket who he did not endorse overperformed, whereas his candidates totally underperformed by as much as 10 points. We have a clear mission, and it is time to move on.
Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears, thank you. We know you have a very pressed schedule, so we appreciate your taking the time.
So Winsome Sears was, I think, the chair of like the Black Americans to re-elect Trump in 2020. So, yeah, that's rough, buddy. That's rough. There's a comment like, so how much of this is like people manipulating folks to turn, like, there are these conversations that people are having, and I think many of them are organic, and I think are people talking about it in the news to sway people a certain kind of way. I think there's always like a bit of manipulation in the news, just to be frank with you. But Trump still tweeted what he tweeted and put out the statements that he put out, and those were his decisions. So people talking about it happening and how that frustrates them or doesn't frustrate them, you know, I think the media was so rough and harsh to Trump, but there were times that he did give him some ammo. And this is definitely some ammo. So, and people are talking about the elections, et cetera. Now, people say that, hey, Trump endorsed a lot of people, and a lot of people that he endorsed won. There's a lot of people that a lot of Republicans are supporting that did win. And I don't think there's any more news really about Arizona, but like, I think Carrie Lake, even MSNBC seemed like they thought she was going to pull it off. I don't know about Blake Masters. He seemed like he was too far behind, but and if he does, and I don't know how much I can complain about Arizona and their election process, but it seems like they are releasing strategically particular batches to just torture everyone, particularly Carrie Lake and people who supported her. That's what it seems like to me. That's what it seems like to me. Because they were releasing some early day batches or whatever that gave Hobbs a little more boost, but what should come out next should be stuff that would favor Carrie Lake. And there's a lot of ballots still to be counted. I don't know if it's still possible for like Masters or what. But it could very well come back to Georgia, and that is a very important race. So many people do need to put their focus, and there's already like mass texts from all over encouraging people to go down to Georgia. It's going to be a crazy, crazy fest. I wonder how much, like, obviously people are going to put so much effort to dragging people out to the polls, but how many people does it take to get down there to like make people like active to get out and go? Like, everyone's going to be aware it's a runoff. It's just interesting. But yeah, there'll be celebrities and stuff down there, and all sorts of Republicans going down there to campaign and to really try to push Herschel over the finish line. Usually incumbents that have to face a runoff, they lose because the people didn't vote for you outright. Why are they going to vote for you when, you're the only on the ballot with somebody else? However, Herschel Walker, how decidedly that Kemp won, Kemp's not going to be on the ballot too. And Kemp wasn't enough to help push Herschel over the edge. And I don't know how the race is going to go. I want Herschel Walker to win. I have said I don't think he was the best candidate, but I want him to win. I don't want Warnock to win, and I definitely don't want Democrats to have a majority or a tie. So, but if it does come down to Georgia, that's going to really pump out Democrat voters like crazy. So, gosh, I hope they pull it out. I really hope they do. I really, really hope they, and to the point of the commenter and stuff, we should be focusing on Georgia, and that should be where everyone's focus is, including Trump, whether he goes down there or not, which some people are asking him not to. And other people are focusing on governing, like Ron DeSantis. He was like tweeting out stuff about hurricanes and safety tips and stuff when a lot of the stuff was going down. And which I'm going to play this one last clip from Guy Benson before I move on.
Correct. And we're also 2 days removed from Ron DeSantis doing something that no one has ever done before, winning by almost 20 points in the state of Florida, which is far beyond even my wildest imagination what he could possibly have achieved. He did it. And Donald Trump won the state of Florida 2 years ago by 3 points. So DeSantis improved on Trump's margin, and Trump, of course, lost the national election. He improved on that margin by 17 points. And one thing that strikes me, Brett, is whenever Trump gets into these big dust-ups, and he's happy to brawl, I think he kind of loves it to some extent, the argument always from Trump world is, well, he's a counterpuncher, right? He won't attack you. He'll only come after you if you've already thrown the first punch. Ron DeSantis is tweeting right now about hurricane preparedness in the state of Florida. He just won a resounding re-election. He's trying to help his state get ready for another hurricane. He did not start this fight at all. This was a preemptive strike by President Trump, and I think we know why.
Yeah, I think we know why, because he's competition. This guy is a twerp. That's a comment. That's not me. Yeah, I don't always love Guy's commentary, but I think he's right there. I think he's attacking because he sees him as competition. It's just that simple. Okay, I'm going to talk about this really quickly, and maybe I'll dive more on it on Monday. As just some more commentary continues to swirl around this issue, but it's been trending all day in at least my neck of the woods in Michigan, and some people have been talking about it nationally. So the GOP, Michigan Republican Party, released a memo detailing different reasons why they believe that they lost and explaining it. And a lot of the focus was really on the top of the ticket, particularly Tudor Dixon. And so Tudor Dixon decided to tweet it out and come at them a bit. So she said, this is a perfect example, let me get rid of my logo here, of what is wrong with the Michigan Republican Party. It's an issue of leadership. Ron Weiser, Sean Maddock, and Paul Cordes all refuse to take ownership of their own failures. It's easy to come out and point fingers now, but the truth is they fought against me every step of the way and put the entire ticket at risk. We need fresh leadership in my GOP, where Republicans will never have a voice in Michigan again. Our state party failed on let my kids learn and secure in my vote. Because of their failure, we now have Prop 2. We have to do better than this current incompetent leadership. So some very scathing words after that memo, and definitely that memo, which you can't read there, but if you go to our Twitter feed, you can go look at it because that's where I saw it. It wasn't something that was supposed to be all lies, I'm sure. A lot of focus was on comments that Tudor Dixon made. So if you're not in Michigan, you don't understand how many ads there were. And I'm sure you guys have a lot of ads in your state, but the Democrats had so much money, so much money. And like Planned Parenthood and other groups also had so much money. There's the ACLU was invested in it, Planned Parenthood is invested in it, you know, just millions upon millions. But Gretchen Whitmer herself had so much money, and and one of the reasons why she had so much money is because there's some kind of loophole that if a governor is like recalled, then the caps on their money is gone. And so Republicans tried to recall her, but it didn't move forward. So it was just in this kind of limbo. But she used it so people could donate to her without like caps. So she just raised a crazy amount of money. She's very well connected. Her father was the president of Blue Cross Blue Shield for a long time. A long time. So she's just very well connected. So and she's an incumbent. It's very hard to beat an incumbent. If we could have pulled it off, it would have been historic. But she was like nonstop abortion. That's what she cared about. That's what she focused on. And she's like no limits. But Whitmer has never voiced that. Like it's obvious it's obvious that's where she's at. Tudor Dixon was kind of like, hey, she's not saying she's not for limitations. They try to ask her the debate, but she won't let that leave her lips because she doesn't want that soundbite, because not many people are for no limitations. Like you've got like other candidates who've like been asked and then they wouldn't say, they're like, oh, they refuse to say they want limitations. There's some people like Beto who's like, I just believe this is a women's choice. And people who have said, Beto's went further than that and said he would have supported the Infants Born Alive or shot down the Infants Born Alive Act. So they survived and then you still vote that down, which, and by the way, they did that in Montana. Like if the baby survives the abortion, like to not give it medical care, just gruesome. I'm like, what is wrong with Montana? I haven't thought much about Montana, but what is happening in Montana to vote that? The voter said, no, we're not going to do that. Just gruesome. But Tudor Dixon had like, there were all these ads that were saying she was like no exceptions, and they're like even life of the mother, and they just repeat the audio of saying no exceptions. And so she's for exceptions for life of the mother, but these were just nonstop ads. And they had all these doctors who were talking about Prop 3, and they're just like, we don't want our patient to die. And that was the narrative. They wouldn't even like really say abortion, and it's just reproductive freedom, and it's behind all these euphemisms. And they never talked about all of the destructive stuff. And they tried to say, and when people were pointing out, like Right to Life and other groups like started to focus more on, actually, I don't know how much Right to Life, but there are plenty of other groups that started to say, and this was my advice, just focus on the parental rights aspect of it, because it affects every individual and it doesn't exclude minors. And so we were talking about parental rights, and that was Tudor's thing and stuff too. But it just, by the time she got any ads on TV, it was 2 weeks before the election. Like by the time she came out of primary, which her primary is like in August, like it's just very late to be in the game. She didn't have any money and stuff, which is curious because DeVos is like the one who really backed her and got her through the primary. And just by the time it was over, she just really didn't have any cash. And a lot of money came in for her last minute. But by then, like she was the voice in the face of no exceptions. That's what people heard in their mind. The first time voters really got to hear her say, I'm for at least exceptions for life of the mother, was at the first debate. And they did that on the west side of the state. I'm not even sure that debate like showed across the whole state. So, and she dominated that debate, and she, oh my gosh, dominated the second debate. Tudor Dixon was a beast. Whitmer was just not cool. Like, but in the end, it was a little too late, I guess. And there's a lot more I could dive into, I suppose, but it is rough. It is rough. So I think just pointing to Tudor, which I'm not saying they're just pointing to Tudor, but that's a lot what the memo was, really how that narrative shaped stuff. They did talk about how the churches and the pro-life movement really pushed back and fought hard, and we drove a really high turnout, but it really was a drag also on the ticket. But I like a lot of the priorities of whether from GOP just in general was to try to salvage the House and the Senate, and from my understanding. So Tudor Dick, I haven't talked to Tudor Dixon about and there's conversations I've had a lot with a lot of people that I'm not going to share with you guys because those are private conversations. Um, but I don't know about how well she was and wasn't helped from them. That's her narrative that she's put on Twitter. So it's really a mess right now. I know everybody worked hard, and I worked so hard too. I'm I think spiritually the Lord just kind of prepared me for um Tuesday night. Like some people tried to like was asking like how are the results going? They're like, well, let me say this. I'm like, don't lie to me. I'm like, just tell me straight. Like you can be straight with me. I'm like, don't sugarcoat it. Like it's we're all gonna find out in like an hour or two. Like, don't bother. So then they're just like, okay, I think the props they're gonna fail, or they're gonna pass. And then they just gave it to me straight. And some other people were really devastated. And you know, I mentioned yesterday, I just kind of keep going back to it is still possible for us to shift things around. It's going to take some time though, and we just got to be strategic and focus on the right things. And the Democrats have really shifted how the system is, and it's been a long-term plan, and Republicans have to somehow tap into that. You're not going to be able to undo all what they did, so you got to kind of flip the whole table over, you know? Thank you very much. So we'll get it together. We'll figure it out to the best of our abilities. But it's hard kind of watching family fight. My sister said the ads against Tudor. Hold on, I lost the ground. The ads against Tudor was ridiculous. You couldn't even watch TV without something against her or Christina Caramo. And I don't think Christina had any ads up at all. They didn't bother ads with Matt DePerno for whatever reason, but the Tudor ads were just nonstop. Like you'd have to have been here to know. And I ended up getting YouTube Red for a little bit, so I wasn't getting YouTube ads. But I was over my family's house one night watching Family Ties on Peacock, and this was like right after the primary, maybe, and it was just boom, boom, boom. Like even just watching that, like we must have watched like 3 episodes, and I must have saw like 6, 7 ads about Tudor and abortion and how they mashed up her commentary. And there's some articles from Bridge Magazine saying how they took her out of context and all this other kind of stuff. But it's not what the voters are seeing. And then I also heard family and friends, like I had one aunt who's just like, what are the Republicans doing? I've seen other people come and knock doors, and they hadn't gotten any. And I think this was right after the primary too, pretty much. Not right after the primary, sometime. It wasn't like a week or 2 ago. But they're like, they haven't seen any of the Republicans. They haven't got any lit, but all these other people are canvassing in her neighborhood. And this was like on Rochester. And I can't say I had any lit sent to my house besides the tag ads. Now, I live in a Democrat area, so maybe they like nobody there is voting for us, and they don't send stuff there. That's a mistake. I also think like stuff like the Democrats tweeted out that parents basically shouldn't have a say in the education and they had to end up deleting that tweet, I would have had that mailer sent to like so many houses. Every house I knew where there was a child there, voters would have seen that. So yeah, there's just hindsight's 2020. And we'll continue to have these conversations about what could have been done differently and how we even got to this spot. But maybe I'll dive even deeper into it Monday. I don't know. I'll have to sit on it. And like I said, it is tough kind of watching family fight, and it's really awkward. And I know all the players involved, pretty much, and have, some personal relationships with quite a few people. So it's just unfortunate that we lost, and I don't want to lose again. So we just got to figure out how to move forward. Anyway, before I go, I want to respond to this video. I've already done a TikTok response to it. I'm gonna try not to be too long because I am started late and I do need to get to church tonight. So let's go ahead. Again, this is a video. The TikToker has about 140 not 140, 140,000 followers on TikTok. So a decent following. And so she decided to talk about how people don't actually think that abortion is murder and how she was going to prove it. And it's one of the crazier examples that I've heard. And it is disheartening that so many people in the comments were like, oh yeah, such great points. Oh yes, such great points. I'm just like, this video is so stupid. And I'm just like, how can people not understand that? And those are the sort of things that keep me up at night, I guess. And a lot of those people, I'm sure, not a lot, but enough of folks like that in the comments went out and voted. So anyway, here's the video. And again, this person has, I guess, blocked me, but we're going to talk about it again.
Actually believes abortion is murder. So let's talk about that. They might think they think abortion is murder, but they don't. But as someone who grew up Catholic and pro-life, here's how I know.
I just want to say disgruntled ex-Catholics are the most disgruntled people in the world, it seems like. But my 2 cents.
Y'all ever seen these MFs? This is like a common sentiment among pro-life Christians. But I don't think it's a stretch to say this is not how people who believe abortion is murder would interact with would-be murderers. We will adopt your baby, you, a person who is pregnant and is thinking about abortion. In their eyes, somebody who is thinking about committing cold-blooded murder. And they got their little pink signs and their stupid little outfits and they're like, we'll adopt your baby. Is that how you would react if somebody said, hey, I want to kill my toddler? We will adopt them. We will take... No! You would be like, wait, what the fuck? You want to murder your child? Call the police, call social services, get somebody involved who is going to deal with it as such. But no, you made a poster. That is not how you interact with someone you think is a murderer.
So, obviously pausing there. It's so... I've talked about this before, how people are coming for adoption. And like even in Michigan, there was Governor Whitmer vetoed funding that was going to go to like pregnancy crisis centers, groups that convince women to keep their babies and will help them and give them diapers, etc., support parenting classes. It just depends on where they're funded. And a lot of people just, it's volunteer, people donate, etc., blah, blah, blah. But I don't know why, if you're going to have abortion, couldn't we at least like at the same time discourage people from having abortions or really, really, really try to convince women not to? Like, can we do that? No, because you guys like to appease Planned Parenthood, who profits off of killing babies. So, but she also vetoed money that's supposed to go toward like funding for like adoption over abortion. So they don't want there to be less abortions in the world. But there's other articles and attacks on adoption that are really kind of disconcerting, especially when there's commentary like this around people like this that are saying, hey, if you don't want to raise your child, there are people out there willing to do that, because there's this narrative, and it's so bizarre to me, because they'll say like, hey, abortion is wrong, and they'll say, are you gonna take care of all these babies? And like the other day, someone was like, haha, Gretchen won, blah blah blah. I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of people out who's so excited about 15,000 black babies dying, and they're like, how many of these babies are you gonna take care of and buy diapers for, and blah blah blah. And I'm just like, do they not know that there's all these people who would be willing to adopt? Now, a lot of women who are turned away from abortion, they will just raise their babies. And 96% of women turned away from abortion, according to Turner's study. You got to read the book to find out. Don't regret not having an abortion. Now, some of them might choose to, put the baby up for adoption, and for someone who will give them their best shot. It's wild to me that so many people who watched Once Upon a Time are like, nah, screw adoption and kill those babies. Like, it's bizarre to me. But there's people out there who are willing to adopt. So there is that narrative of people who think these kids will just clog up foster care, which is a different sort of system. And these people are just letting you know, hey, you don't have to do that. If you're desperate and you don't think that you can take care of the baby, someone will find it a loving home. And they come for them. So there's plenty of people out there willing to help. But the last thing I want to say about that narrative is, it's interesting that they think that it's justifiable to have an abortion to kill off these people, because they worry about who will take care of them financially. But when it comes to people who want you to pay for your health care, it's like, no, you have to do that. It's like, well, why can't we just let you, survival of the fittest, like natural selection? If you can't pay for your health care, that sounds like that's your problem. But you don't want it to be like that. It's like, no, I'm here, so you take care of me. And by the way, I can't take care of the baby, like you kill it. But it's like, no, people are willing to do that. So it's just an interesting, comparison, because they don't, we got to kill them off because you think no one will take care of them. But they don't have any value, or we can't protect them from violence. But when it comes to you can't take care of yourself, it's like, well, you just got to suck it up and take care of me. It's just how they are. But as to why not call the police and why not call CPS? Well, one, a crime hasn't been committed yet, so we're not going to the police. But second, it's not a crime. I mean, in some states, I guess it is. Not in Michigan. So who are we going to tell? That's like 1800s, a slave going to like the marshal and saying, hey, my human rights are being violated. And like, what do you mean? Like, I'm a slave. And it's like, oh, let me exercise the Fugitive Slave Act and take you back to your master because it's legal. It's just a really ridiculous point. It's so dumb. Why don't we call the police for what? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? It's legal. So just a really disingenuous point. People saying, hey, you don't have to do this. There's another way. Because they think it's murder. Because they think it's wrong. Let's go on.
It's kind of like if somebody, like one of your friends told you that they got an abortion when they were younger, your reaction is going to be a whole hell of a lot different than if your friend told you that they killed a child when they were younger. You're going to treat one of them like an abortion, something you have a moral aversion to, and one of them like murder.
I think both are really bad. Again, one is legal, one is not. Apparently in Montana, you can just let the babies die if they survive the abortion. Like, there's some... I've heard people who are pro-choice even like justify infanticide too. So people have all kind of wild opinions, but I have found out friends who've had abortions, and it was just like, it is kind of a stark thing, and you're like, oh my gosh, you didn't know that they went through this, and have been very traumatic experiences that they regret. because they do realize that they did take someone else's life. So people react all kinds of different ways. They probably want to ask for more info. Would be like, "Are you serious?" And just go from it. It would be an evolving conversation for sure.
Because only one of them is murder, and you only think one of them is murder. That's not to say you don't think they're both bad, you just don't think they're both murder. This is another reason that it's like clearly.
So I want to address this though, because there are people who say that it is like murder, and her argument is basically you don't treat people who have abortions bad enough, therefore you can't really think it's murder, which is a wild position to me. But there are people who do treat women who have abortions very terribly. But the reason why there's pro-life people who think it is killing a child, who is killing a baby, and do think that is murder, but would they call the woman committing the abortion a murderer? There's plenty of pro-life people who wouldn't hold that view because they don't think that women have the mental capacity or they're mentally culpable in what they're doing, because they don't actually believe it's a baby. They don't actually think it's alive. Like, they don't have that sort of ill will intent when they're actually committing the act. Now, I think that's true in a lot of cases. I think a lot of women don't have true informed consent when they are in the act. And so a lot of women or people, pro-life people, view these women as victims. They view them as the victims as well as the children. And they see how society has constructed them around abortion, supporting abortion, feeling there's so many women who feel so desperately like they need it, not in some kind of life threatening circumstance, but just to survive. Like, they don't even feel that they're equal without it. Like, when people talk about how does abortion harm you, I think we've done so much great harm to society with our abortion culture, for sure. It's just really infantilized women and made them weak. We are the weaker sex as long as we feel that we need abortion to be equal to men. We are the weaker sex if we feel that we need the power to end the lives of our children in order to be equal in society. And it's very strange to me that other people can't see that. I do think that there are women who maybe aren't all the way there with the culpability, but I think there's plenty of women who are still aware that it's a life, but just rationalize, in her opinion, like why it's bad but not as bad. People do all kind of reasoning to get to where they are, but I don't really think there's any pro-life organization or group that thinks that women should be punished. They think it should be illegal, and if a doctor decides to do it, then you'd be, penalizing the doctor. And they're like, you would punish a doctor? Didn't you think we needed to punish Kermit Gosnell, who was inducing labor with these abortions and snipping the baby's spines? Like, if they're killing and breaking the law, yeah, they should be punished, like, for sure. But let's keep watching.
You don't actually believe this. There's like a whole resources section on this United States Conference of Catholic Bishops website that's about abortion resources. One of them is this whole thing called Bridges of Mercy for Healing After Abortion. That's kind of the tone the entire thing strikes, is like healing after abortion, resources after you've had an abortion, that all essentially lead you back to God or whatever. This is not how you treat people you believe committed cold-blooded murder against a baby. You do not have an entire website full of resources for helping them get back to the Lord. I know that because I looked. I looked for resources for somebody who committed murder. Few and far between. And if somebody came to your church and was like, hey, I'm pregnant, I've had 3 abortions before, I'm looking for counseling, you would not look at them as a committer of a triple homicide.
I don't know if that's true. You'd probably be like, maybe a little stunned, but you'd want to help them through whatever. Like with anyone else who's committed a sin. What's interesting is, again, her argument is that we don't treat women who have abortions badly enough, therefore we don't think it's actually murdering a baby. There are probably more resources for women who have had abortions, which, by the way, there's like a million a year in the United States, than people who do like prison ministries. Which, by the way, I know people who do prison ministries. It's not for everyone, but there should probably be more people involved in them. But one man who used to work with A. Allen, Rec, no Tex, Randolph, Tex is his nickname. But he had a prison ministry, and he actually got into it with the warden, and they're like, these are my animals, and they didn't want him to come, but he kept coming. He even like had this bus that he would like write Jesus Saves and just kind of preach outside, and they come to the window and listen to him. So there's people out there who want redemption for these people. And something that I mentioned in my TikTok video, I'm like, Moses killed someone and God used him mightily. When Stephen was martyred, God's view of justice wasn't to rain fire down on everybody. It was to use Apostle Paul, who was persecuting the Christians, and to use him for his glory. So if you're coming for Christians for not being mean enough to women who have abortions, there's plenty of people who just want to see people saved. Do you know the most videos I saw regarding Jeffrey Dahmer? Like because they just did the Netflix series, and I haven't watched it. I don't know if I'm gonna watch it, but there were so many TikTok videos talking about, did Jeffrey Dahmer find the Lord? And Jeffrey Dahmer said this, blah blah blah, etc. Like talking about his conversion. So I don't know that much about Jeffrey Dahmer to know. I didn't know that. I just saw that from the TikTok videos. But that's what a lot of people were obsessed about. The fact that someone could do something so awful and then come and find the Lord. So people want people to find Jesus, and they want them to be redeemed, and they want them to find salvation. And I want this person making this video. I said, I don't know what hardened you so, but there's redemption for you too. And I don't know if that's what got me the block or my other response in a comment, because she was like, oh, you just missed the whole point. It's like, no, her point is that we don't treat these women bad enough. So obviously we don't think it's murder, but do we treat all levels of murder the same? Like, do you treat a serial killer the same as someone who, who accidentally, like, maybe they're a drunk driver or something? Now people have a very bad opinion of people who do that, especially if you know them and you knew the victim. It just kind of depends how it cuts and how close to home it is to you. But there's just kind of a different view that people have. I mean, the way we just had a crazy person who mowed down people in the Waukesha killings. He represented himself. That was the craziest trial. That guy's a scumbag. Lock him away, throw him away the key. But people view differently him versus, like, I don't know, if it was a crime of passion. What if a woman like killed her abusive husband? Like, people would sympathize with her. Like, people have different emotions on different things, but that doesn't make it not murder or not killing, etc. So just because people feel differently or you rate people's feelings doesn't make it less of a slain child. Like, usually when people say you don't really think it's a baby, it's followed by the scenario of, let's say an IVF clinic is on fire next to, and there's a child in the building. You can either save like 1,000 embryos, or you can save the 3-year-old. Who do you save? And if you save the 3-year-old, that means you don't think all these embryos, that how would you store them and keep them safe? And are they ever going to be implanted? All these other questions that you could ask yourself. You don't actually think that that implanted babies in mothers' wombs who are growing and just need time to develop are actually people because you saved the 3-year-old. Like, that's where I thought this video was going at first. And I think her logic is way more absurd. Way more absurd. Yeah, my sister pointed out there are also different degrees of murder that will determine sentences. Yeah, the argument is really silly. And yeah, and she also brought in prison ministry. There's plenty of people involved in prison ministries. Let's finish off the video.
You would look at them as somebody that maybe you could help. Whereas if somebody walked in and was like, hey, I had 3 kids, I killed them all, pregnant again, you would treat them very fucking differently. Again, this is...
How would you treat someone who had no remorse versus someone who was ready for change? Like, how do you treat someone who's sick with addiction, who comes in and says, I want help, I need help, I've hit my rock bottom, versus someone who's comes, I don't know, in smelling like the drugs, and you know, you try to still preach to them, you try to still get them saved, you want to see them delivered and set free, and you want God to redeem them. You know that God can save them, and God died on the cross for them just like he died for me on the cross, and you preach that message. But it doesn't change what people do or didn't do, but people's attitudes about it certainly makes a big difference, don't you think? Like, I would be horrified if someone said, yeah, I've killed 3 and I'm gonna, like, you know, have another or abort another. That'd be horrible. But, you know, I'd also know that that woman was very wounded, and needed some help. I don't think you can do something like that and you know, Harry Potter, you kill someone and that splits your soul and you make a Horcrux. You can't just... Women who say that they have abortions and they're okay, I've never met a woman who said they had an abortion, they're just okay. They have some kind of emotional problem, especially with the issue itself. And you keep talking, you keep talking, you keep talking, and you're just like, you are not okay. I told you I'm working on a book about abortion. It's called, of course, God is blatantly against abortion. It was very important to me to lay it out why it's wrong, to lay out the science, the philosophy, all that stuff, and especially what the Bible says about it. But it wasn't to... my purpose is not to condemn women to hell for it. That's not my purpose. I want people to know that it is bad, but I want people to turn away from this bad thing. I want people to make decisions that are healthier for themselves. And I want to see women redeemed. That's what people want. So this whole argument is very strange, bad. Let's actually finish out the video.
Isn't to say that, like, you don't think abortion is bad or that people shouldn't get them or that they're immoral. That's like a problem for a different day. But so many arguments with pro-life people are just like a complete non-starter because they're like, they're murdering babies. So how could you argue that? But nobody actually thinks that. They just think they think that. Anyway.
Now I can
kind of the tone.
I can destroy her arguments really, because let's flip it. I will ask people all the time, do you think Scott Peterson should have been charged for the death of his unborn child? People, I have yet to hear someone tell me that no, he shouldn't have. Now people say it's different because the baby was so far along. Doesn't matter. It's a woman's choice. She can... there's places where she can abort up to the time, basically the delivery date. So do you believe that he should have been charged? And they say it's different. They say it's different because it wasn't the mother's choice. So if it's different because it was the mother's choice, that's the only variable, is that the woman decided it. That's the only variable. So is it a life or isn't it a life? Because you think it has rights and should be protected from violence when someone else does the violence. But when it's the woman who okays the violence, it's totally fine. That is a contradiction. That is a that is a contradiction that is very similar to contradictions that Frederick Douglass laid out and is what is the 4th of July to a slave speech. You can, which I compared to abortion when you're going to go, if you want to go read that article on blacktnews.com. or if it doesn't have to be him. There was a story a few years ago where there's a woman, her boyfriend tricked her into taking abortion pills, and she was 6 weeks pregnant. He ended up settling, but they were gonna charge him with murder. 6 weeks. And I bet most women wouldn't say that he shouldn't be charged for that because they feel it's fine if it's a woman's choice. But if someone else causes violence to the child, then that is a bad thing. So is it murder or is it not murder? Last thing I want to point out, because she keeps making these comparisons that, oh, you wouldn't treat a murder this way, you wouldn't treat a murder this way. There was a really big story a couple years ago when there was a cop who walked on the wrong level of her apartment, and opened the door, saw this black guy there. And the story is that she thought she was in her apartment and there was a stranger in her apartment, which did make sense. Like, there's obviously details that are different from her home to his home. And he also smoked weed, because I'm like, okay, you know the smell of that. So if you don't smoke weed and he smokes weed, how can you not know that's not your place? How are you so confused? The story doesn't make sense. I'm not saying that she's lying, but it's just like a once in a lifetime kind of case. But she saw this big black guy and she ended up shooting him. So she got convicted for murder. And the victim's brother did something that was so incredible. So incredible.
And I wasn't gonna ever say this in front of my family or anyone, but I don't even want you to go to jail. I want the best for you. Because I know that's exactly what both of them would want you to do. And the best would be give your life to Christ. I'm not gonna say anything else. I think giving your life to Christ would be the best thing that both of them would want you to do. Again, I love you as a person, and I don't wish anything bad on you. I don't know if this is possible, but can I give her a hug, please? Please?
Yes. So I'm a Christian. I'm like, God, am I that much of a Christian? Like, that was some really a powerful exercise in grace and mercy and just the love of Christ in a situation like that. And there were so many people who criticize this young man and like, no, that's a sign of weakness, and they're trying to use people's faith to make them compliant and make them weak. But that took so much strength. That was like inhuman strength. That was the strength of the Lord in that man's heart. She shot his brother and killed him. That woman committed murder. I don't think anyone, well, I guess people did debate it. People did debate her sentencing. But the commenter in the video of the TikTok, I think she would agree that that woman murdered her brother. And what did this Christian do? He forgave her. He said, I want the best for you. He said, I don't even want you to go to jail, but I want you to give your life to Christ. And that's what my brother would have wanted. And he asked to hug her. And by the way, that judge gave her Bible. And she asked something like, do you really think I can find redemption or value in my life? And she said yes, and she gave her a Bible. And people criticize the judge for doing that. So yeah, just because you don't throw people out doesn't mean that what they did isn't serious. But we are all sinners in need of a savior. And I believe that God redeems. So again, I thought that argument that she had was really poor. One of the worst ones I've heard. There was a lot of people in the comments who didn't think so. So God help this generation. And again, she had 140,000 TikTok followers. Just reading some of the comments. Yeah. She had 140,000 TikTok followers. And I pray for them. And I hope that whatever turned her away from her faith, that's made her so cynical and bitter. And like I said, man, the most disgruntled atheists seem to be ex-Catholics. I tell you, that's just what I've observed. It's anecdotal, but I'm like, I don't know what happened to these people. But I hope she finds her faith again. Anyway, that is the show. I got it. I really have to go. Thank you guys for being with me. I'm so sorry for starting late. But we'll have, I'm sure, plenty of tea on Monday for all sorts of things. But I'll hopefully also like some happy stuff to talk about and some positive directions we can go as people who just want to see good things happen for our country. So enjoy the rest of your weekend and God bless you.